Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and I am coming off a set of days off that I think I'm pretty certain that I put to good use. But a lot of people might look at what I do and look at it as a waste of time, right? You're in your 60s, Cindy. Why? Relax, retire, not retire, or you're getting close to retire. Slow down. And I'm not that person in all truth. I have always a bit of a energizer bunny. It drives people a little bit crazy, but at the same time, you know, people, especially in my family, because they don't quite understand what I do. And not only do they not quite understand what I do, they don't know where it comes from. They don't know where that energy comes from. They don't have that courage, that bravery in their mind. That's what they're calling it, right? To me, it doesn't seem like that. It seems more like just freedom, right? But they don't know where that energy comes from. And it is, I do believe that passion for life, it's that gumption, it's that appreciation to be here, it's the opportunity to try, right? It's in the creating of the best human being I possibly can, right? I am that canvas and I'm creating this life for me, right? And I was thinking about it these past couple of days. In the lesson that I've got, we are supposed to be inspired by one particular word. For each one of us, it's different, right? When I was growing up, it was this word, despite. That, it got me through such tough times. And at the same time, it validated my reason for being there, or, right, taking my fair share. And it is in that gumption that keeps me going, that keeps me wanting to discover more, to enjoy it, And I look out in the world and people, they're so into their misery. Like sometimes if they could just have a recorder and actually sit and listen to themselves, and even then, they really would not hear or recognize how much they don't appreciate. And they could say they appreciate, but just in the grumbling and the complaining, and right, that slander of our neighbors and people we don't even people we don't even know. And I think it drags us in our lives. It makes it so that we don't have that gumption, that energy, right? That understanding that, well, it's in the pursuit of something better, something that I can contribute. And even if I'm just contributing it to myself, that's enough. Everything else is gravy. Everything else is sprinkles, right? I'm doing this for myself, but it's a strange story I'm living out, that I'm creating on this blank canvas, that I get to dictate, I get to create, I get to, right, I get to write. And it is a little bit, right, in the missteps, right? And it's in the right, that despite, because when you're using words like this, and I use this word all through my childhood, all through school, just despite, right? Like, no, you can't come, no. Right, I was right, I always took my fair share, and even though I wouldn't be able to have this, right, this experience, or looking at myself as an obese child, and right, always, right, wanting second helpings, or wanting a treat that my sisters were getting, and the answer being no, being denied, it makes it so we don't want to say that to ourselves, right? As adults, we don't want to say no to these things. And those are where the difficulties are for us, because, we have this word this week, forgiveness, right? So I got to look at myself in a little bit of that equation, right? And recognize that, I have to forgive myself. Today is Valentine's Day. I'm supposed to be loving on myself, right? Not having a Valentine, right? Love on myself. And I gave myself that day, I gave myself a lovely day, and still moved ahead, right? But still, right, in that. And it's not self-devouring or anything. It's just in that self-parenting that I've always done, in that gumption, in that despite, right? That somebody didn't say no, and then I went, oh, okay, and right, no, that in my family, number one, that wasn't allowed. Right, it was get out there and try again, and I did, and those were tough lessons, and those are lessons that I didn't not appreciate, right? It is in the intent, right? It is the intent that I feel. I get it. Sometimes when we have difficulties, right? Even in that self-parenting, when I have to say no to myself, to that pink ice donuts with the sprinkles, and I smile at that, but it truly is a problem, because I don't want to say no to myself, right? I've earned that pink ice donut with the sprinkles. But I know that pink ice donut with the sprinkles is not serving me. So sometimes in that self parenting and understanding, this is my story, my canvas, that I have to be that parent to myself, right? Not wanting to be, understanding why I don't want to say no, and wanting, right, to cave in and let myself have that bit of coddle, when in all reality, what I really need is that little bit of tough love, right? And when they say tough and they put the love to it, right, that's that's not bad. That's definitely not bad. That's right. That's in that caring. It's that in that watchfulness. It's in that hypervigilance, right? It's in that wanting to be around, right? And then we look at this other aspect of, right, where you step the line of that tough love, where it's right. And that's just not love, because if you can recognize the intent, if you can feel the intent, when it's so obvious, sometimes so obvious that you don't have to feel bad, or you right, because you're not just making an assumption, right? And in this, right, day of Valentine's Day, when I'm trying to be kind to myself, to love on myself, to not say no, but still allow myself those small treats, those small desires, because in the end that's what it is, right? It's just the desires. It's just like well, I was going to say that, but nah, I think I'll pass. I think I'll pass on that one because it is insensitive sometimes, the way that we take from ourselves, right? And hello, Nancy dear. Hello, Nancy dear. How we take from ourselves without giving to ourselves. But I give a lot, right? I give a lot to myself. I gave myself Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, Nancy. Happy Valentine's Day. I had a weekend of nothing except being in this word forgiveness that stirred up emotions. And to find out tonight when I went into Wikipedia, I like Wikipedia, right? Especially if you really truly want to understand something without, well, I guess that what is that preferencing, when you move towards something more than you move towards something else. Favoritism, that's what it is, right? Wikipedia is pretty straightforward. They go by the information that they receive on that, right? I went in and they were saying, forgiveness. Forgiveness is a psychological process. It's not an emotional process. I thought about it. I said, oh, that's so cool. I thought about it some more and I went, you're right. It's not an emotional process, right? It is a psychological process because you have to get to the bottom of it. You have to talk about it. You have to think about it. You have to analyze it. You have to compare it, right? We just don't give the forgiveness, right? You forgive if it's asked for, but you just don't give it because you have to understand what you're forgiving because you can't just, right? That's like turning the other cheek, right? Just to let that person to go off and do that to somebody else again. So I had to take it into consideration in this word, right? Forgiveness, when they're saying, you know, forgiveness is a psychological process, not an emotional process. And I have to say that's not always true because sometimes in that discovery is the pain, right? Right? In that betrayal, sometimes is the emotional distress. It's not a psychological distress, that's an emotional distress, betrayal, right? So that's when I'm thinking, I have to go deeper into this, right? Because forgiveness, right? If that's a psychological process, then I'm missing something, right? Because I was devastated emotionally when, right? When I could have said or I could have stayed uh, unconscious to any of these, right? Not stayed unaware of, right? It's kind of like what you don't know doesn't hurt you, but then right? And when then it's a problem. Then something has to be done about it. Then there has to be resolution. Then there has to be forgiveness. But how do you get to forgiveness? Because betrayal is tied up in that. And the betrayal is what is the dagger for me, right? It's a dagger because it's a no-brainer, right? In that betrayal, it made it so easy to give up on my marriage. It just, right? Just the thought of it, done, go. Right? And there's no turning back from that. But maybe it's in the freedom that it gives you, right? In giving that forgiveness, right? Maybe. But I've been thinking about it. I was going about my day, giving myself a little bit of a Valentine's Day myself. Did you give yourself one of those days, Nancy? Nancy says, Cindy, just remember when you are trying to forgive someone, think about Heavenly Father. He says, if you don't forgive others, I won't forgive you. Right. Right. And I get that, Nancy, but it's hard. It's hard when there's an imbalance to that. Right? When there's such an imbalance to that. I couldn't even imagine, right? But you're right. You're right. I could look at it that way, but it just takes me deeper into the lesson. And we still have a couple of days, but it was okay. I was at home with that and I want to, right? I want to get it right. I want to get it right. And for me, it's just in that understanding of evolution that none of us are even close to getting it right. Not even close. We're all a bunch of one celled amoebas in comparison to where we're supposed to be going or even where we're supposed to be at. So I'm not even going to try to comprehend anymore today about that. It was right. It was a hard one. And forgiveness, I have to look at different things and it kind of makes me mopey at the same time. Right? It's Valentine's Day. I'm thinking about ex-husbands and right? My ex-husband, he did Valentine's Day big. In fact, he asked me to marry him on Valentine's Day. Yeah, it was he rolled up one of those foils inside of a cigarette package and he twisted it around like an engagement ring. And then he gave it to me at the bar because I was working at the bar that night. Made a big scene out of it. He was a very romantic, very sweet man. And yeah, he kind of swept me off my feet. But I forgot, yeah, I did get engaged on Valentine's Day, right? And I remembered, when our marriage fell apart, when he came home that day from work and he says, Cindy, he says, I just don't know if I want to be married anymore. And I just took it as betrayal, right? Now looking back, I could see it was nothing, right? It had nothing to do with that. But, I felt it. I felt that sting. And, I had let down my walls for the first time in my life. And, right, just to have them all locked up. And they were all locked up for a very, very long time. Thank goodness for Mother Nature. Thank goodness I went to that social and won that camp set. Got me back into the Mother Nature, right? Got me moving again. Crying, talking time, right? makes it easier to forgive. It does, right? There was a time that I was so hurt, I didn't even want to get out of bed when my marriage fell apart. But it did over time, right? And I wouldn't be here right now because he was a handful. But I was a handful too. And I couldn't even imagine, right? Because if I hadn't found YouTube, if I hadn't started my YouTube channel, I would never have been able to get off those gambling machines, right? Those video lottery terminals. I would never have been able to get away from gambling. And who's to say, right? Whether or not I'd even be around, let alone sitting here. Definitely, I would not be sitting around here. Okay, let's see what Nancy's got to say. Um, Betrayal is hard, but remember, no one is ever exactly who they say they are. So that's why you have to be careful and have your wits about yourself. 100% Nancy, but sometimes it's in that hypervigilance and overcautiousness that we can stop ourselves from moving towards the way we're supposed to be moving, because right, we're so overly cautious, we're so afraid to even take a step forward. And I'm supposed to be that example, aren't I? Right? I'm supposed to be that example. But even in saying that, I'm still sitting here going, okay, I'm ready for some change. I'm ready for a new adventure, and I just keep moving forward with the things that I love doing, right? And showing up live, sharing whatever I'm doing, right? But still not being, I don't know, things just not opening up in a way that I thought it was going to open up. So maybe that's a good sign, right? Maybe that's a good sign, right? Because I was supposed to make different choices. And that just indicates that possibly I might have been making some different choices. Okay, let's see what Nancy says here. I dated for 1 year before I would ever accept a marriage proposal. Even then, 2 years into my marriage, and I had to be rescued. Really, Nancy? I remember you saying, for myself, uh, it was instant. It was on both ends, and he pursued me. I didn't pursue him, right? Until I missed him, and then I pursued him. Right? And then I pursued him, but it was an amazing marriage. And life has issues. And I wasn't experienced in being able to be the wife that, well, he needed, let alone he wanted, right? And I wanted him to be happy. I loved him lots, and I wasn't going to hold him back. And he wanted me to have things that I was ready for children. And right, he was really backing out of that one, and understandably, because he had upbringing similar to mine, right? So he didn't want to pass those genes down. I get it, right? I didn't get it then. I kind of get it now. Right? And I have to say, I don't kind of get it. I do get it. And I wish I hadn't made it as hard on him as it was. We were very. It was painful. It was painful. But I think we treated each other with a lot of understanding and a lot of kindness, and it's probably why it took so long. right, right. It was right. 10 years later, finally, we got that divorce. Okay. Um, Nancy says, my husband for 2 years treated me like a queen. Then, bam, I needed to be rescued and spent time trying to recover for years after that. Really, Nancy? He never told me about his expanded family. He did not tell me about being a convict. Had I known, I would never have gone near him. And Nancy says, I am done with guys now, forever single. I never thought that I would get married. It was a fairy tale. It was a dream, and it had to be manifested because it was something I wanted since I was a little kid, and it was something that was being denied me. And I had this motto, despite, right? Despite, how do I get this done? Right? How do I get to be Cinderella? Even my wedding dress was a Cinderella wedding dress. I walked into that bridal store and I said, let me try on the two most expensive dresses you got. I took the second most expensive dress. It was beautiful. It wasn't just because it was the most expensive dress. I just knew if it was expensive, it was going to be absolutely beautiful. And that whole experience of from meeting my husband to, right, to when we stopped seeing each other 10 years after we separated. Right, but it is what it is, and that's a story, and it's amazing because I have nothing negative, and I don't think he would ever have anything negative to say about me. I think we probably, if we bumped into each other, probably pick up, probably right where we started. Right, it was just that he wasn't ready, right? I married somebody who was 10 years younger than me, and I was done partying, right? And he wasn't, and it was probably something as simple as that, right? Grateful because lots of people's marriages break up in terrible, terrible ways, where the husbands are cheating or the wives are cheating, or right, they're being sneaky, and I was sneaky because I was playing VLTs. I wasn't spending time with my husband. I was making those video lottery terminals my best friend, right? Let me have a sip of my coffee. My mouth is all dry. Not like the coffee's gonna make it any better. Mm, good cup of coffee though. But yeah, I never thought I was gonna get married, but I understand it's something, right, that I always wanted, something that I dreamt of. It had to manifest in some way, and that's exactly right. And just like, that idea of, I knew I was never gonna have children. Like my entire life, I knew I was never gonna have children, and I never had children. And it wasn't from not trying, and I did get pregnant, but I couldn't hold them, and then right, so you're not having children, so what you think about is realized, right? And you can think about all the things that we realize, and you can beat yourself up. I just had an image of me holding on to a big tuna and whacking myself up in the head, because you can beat yourself up for those failings to not recognize. I'm doing it. I was doing it today, right? I was doing it today, and then I was also allowing some of these feelings because again, these are in my family dynamics, and epigenetically, I'm not just talking about my siblings and my parents, I'm talking about my grandparents and people going back in history. Like this has been a problem, right? And yeah, how deep, I have no idea, but it's open to me whether or not to go right? And search out, because I know what I'm doing is right. It's answering a lot of questions. It's making me feel better about, right, the life and the family that I got dropped into. So there, it's a no-brainer, right? It's a no-brainer, but at the same time, it's a little bit of that hypervigilance. And sometimes I have to recognize it's a little bit of that extra hypervigilance that I put into it that makes me kind of, right, a little gnarly of contemplation. It's not contemplations, right? It's on my mind all day today. It's supposed to be a nice day. It was a nice day anyway. And my house is all done, ready for the week, right? Okay. Um, he never told me his whole family were fugitives. Nancy says his dad was like another Warren Jeffs, lol. Wow. His mother was always quiet and never spoke. She looked afraid all the time. I should have used that as a sign of fear and maybe should have gotten away seeing his mom like that. That's kind of some of these things that I've been kind of working through too, Nancy. My father, right, knowing that relationship and that experience that I was having with my mother, and I didn't give him credit for all the things he did to help make me feel bad or make me feel better about what was going on, or help me um, overcome and understand my mother's perspectives. And he always did his best to soften the blow, to cushion the blow, to, right, make it a little bit better, kiss the boo boo, right. And it was that balance that made it so that I didn't become the narcissist. I could have very easily become like my mother, right? And I don't have children, but if I had had children, there's a pretty good chance I would have passed those narcissistic traits that were very highly developed to my family into my own children, and there wouldn't have been any chance to, right, to epigenetically end the cycle of abuse that's probably been going on for lifetimes, right? Deep stuff. This is what goes on in my mind when I'm at home piddling around, or getting triggered by a video, by a conversation or a lesson, and right. And then, right, come in at the end of my day when the energy, right, because I was talking about those people that are just rah, 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 just grumbling about everything, and then their whole life is all falling apart, and they're wondering why it's all falling apart, right, right, and it's because they're asking it in with all the grumbling, right, and you know maybe it's a lesson that I'm doing pretty good with, but I don't think that I'm a big grumbler about things, right? I am fair and I am firm, but just like that tough love, right? It's still love. It's in the intent, right? It's the intent. And grateful that I have that yeah, I have, right? I'll feel it for sure. I'll feel it, right? And with the lessons that I have now, because there was a time where I would feel it and I would ignore it, right? For the exact same reasons why, right? Your mother-in-law sat in a chair looking scared because she didn't know that she had that power to do something about it. It's into each one of our choices, and right? Those are the lessons that I'm learning. These are the lessons that I've been learning for years now, right? It's in my choices. Okay, let me take a look here. Um, his parents lost their house when the kids were caught dealing street drugs from the home. Oh, that's terrible. Isn't that terrible? And their kids have kids, and then, right? And then it's just passed down from one generation to a next generation, right? It just takes one person, and you could just take the whole family in a whole new direction, right? Oh my goodness. We did pretty good. Me and my sisters, we did pretty good. We all were able to put a roof over our head, right? Some of us more creatively than others, and some of us working 10 times harder than others, and then others, right, taking into consideration their mental and emotional well-being and wanted to enjoy life. And who we're talking about, me, right? I designed my life so that I can enjoy my life. I'm not a stranger to hard work, and I don't shirk, is that the word? That the hard work, right? I whistle while I work. I don't mind it, right? Be funner if it's all interesting and a new experience, but sometimes it's just the experience of burning it out of our systems, right? And sometimes in that work, right, we can do other things, multitasking, and some of those things that Cindy likes to do. Okay. Their daughter had a baby. Oh my goodness. And killed the infant and buried it in a trash can and was in prison for a while. Wow, Nancy. Right? You're better off on your own. I agree. I agree, Nancy. You're right. You stay single. You stay single. Right? But the thing is, that was a lesson, Nancy. And it doesn't mean that you can't get into another relationship, because you are going to put that next person just through the ringer, just to make sure that you're not falling into the same trap that you fell into the first time, right? We learn from our mistakes, right? And unfortunate, some of these mistakes are that painful, but you got out of it in any case, Nancy, right? So I, for one, am very grateful that Nancy, right, managed to get herself out of a very bad situation, right? It starts with just recognizing, right? Sometimes you can't do anything about it in the moment, but the one thing you can do is just get into your brain and start making a plan, right? Start checking off a list of people that might be able to help you, right? Yeah. You're so interesting, Nancy. So many stories. Like she'd make a great heroine. Is that the word? Like a character in a main character in a novel. She has had so many crazy adventures in her life, and crazy unique adventures, right? But you wouldn't expect anything less, because Nancy herself is unique herself, right? Okay, you guys, I am begging out. I am done with this set of days off. I am back to work in the job that puts the roof over my head. Tomorrow, grateful to have that job to ground in. Grateful that you popped in, Nancy. Thank you for sharing that. Right? But that's what it is in being natural storytellers, right? And you were definitely, Nancy, right? A unique, right? And an amazing storyteller. Grateful. Yeah. Everybody, have a great night, and we'll see each other tomorrow. Thank you, Nancy, for popping in.